moving to an African country sounds like a dream until the fear of starting over kicks in. Let's talk about why this fear holds you back and how you can overcome it. Trust me, I had this fear myself too. So I know how it feels to be at this point, to be like, I want to make this move, but I'm afraid, I'm scared, I don't know what's going to happen to me. Will I be financially stable? Will I be safe? Will I be this and other things? My name is Marvin. I moved 2 years ago from Germany to Nairobi in Kenya, and it was the best decision I made in my life. But of course, it was not easy. It was connected to a lot of challenges, a lot of ups and downs, and of course, a lot of questions even before I made this move. And therefore, I want to make this video for you, how I overcame this fear of the unknown and starting over, that it doesn't hold you back as well. So for many, moving to the African continent is a lifelong dream. But I know there are many questions like job security, financial stability, healthcare, safety, and many more doubts. And I met over the last couple of years, I met so many people that are having the same questions. And even now when I came back home, visiting family, meeting other people, just by them asking me questions and hearing all the doubts still, even after I now lived there for 2 years in Kenya, I can still see through that this fear is mostly because they don't know how it looks, they don't know how life is there, they don't know basically nothing about the African continent. And when I tell them stories, when I show them how it looks, they're always so surprised. But of course, this fear will not disappear until you've seen things for yourself. But at this point, I understand these fears, I understand these doubts, because I know where they are coming from. I had some of them myself, not all of them, because I was also just ready to take a big risk, and I was ready to just do everything I can. And if it doesn't work out, the worst thing that could have happened to me was just going back to Germany, picking up some work again, and continuing life as normal until I can start over again. And if I understood one thing, is that all these fears are rooted in uncertainty. It's not because it's actually dangerous. It's not because it's impossible to get a job or to be financially stable moving to an African country. It's mainly because we don't know how it looks and how life is on this continent. Because when we travel from the West, from Europe, from the US, we most of the time travel within Europe, we most of the time travel within the US, and maybe visit some other countries. But what I recognize many times is that the African continent most of the time is completely avoided, or people say it's on the list and they want to do it, but they actually never did it, or are never willing to do it. Because there's always something that pushes them back, because they don't know what to do there, if they will be robbed, if they will be safe over there, if there is anything to do even. So many people just have this fear. What I realized from many conversations I had here now in Germany, they have this fear because everything is uncertain. Therefore, I understand the reasoning of it. But what I realized as well during all these conversations and the time I've spent here on the continent now and traveling through different countries, is completely the opposite of what people in the West think Africa looks like and Africa is like. Because the people are one of the warmest people I've met in the entire world. They are very friendly, very open, and I've been to different kinds of countries here. I've been to Uganda, I lived in Kenya for 2 years, Tanzania, Namibia, South Africa, and I didn't see any people that wanted to harm me. Most of the time they're very friendly, very open, very welcoming, and are there to support you in case you have any questions, and very hospitable as well. And what I see in this is that the fear we have is oftentimes holding us back to experience the most beautiful things we could experience. If we would just open our eyes and be ready to tackle things that we are not comfortable with doing, for instance, or that we would tackle things that we just don't know anything about. There's one thing I understood now, is that once you take the first step into a direction where you don't know anything about, before you do the first step, you're always painting these different pictures in your head of the worst possible scenarios. And oftentimes, I would say 99% of the time, these scenarios never occur, and everything is much smoother, much easier, much better than you expect it to be. Once I understood this, I moved to Kenya, I traveled different African countries, and now I see that we have so many stereotypes about different places, and that I think most of them might be wrong, because we just have this picture from people that talk about this, but we never actually experience anything ourselves. And actually I had a couple of conversations as well with someone from the US, with someone from Austria, and the person from the US was telling me, for instance, that they had the plan to move to an African country for the last couple of years, but he never even traveled because of like different things that occur, but was traveling all the time to different locations and different places in the world basically. So instead of like doing all these trips and just keeping this dream in your head, the person was just avoiding of making this step. This is also rooted at some point to a certain extent to any kind of fear, because you are just avoiding this by taking 10 different trips throughout the last couple of years to different countries where you feel more familiar with. For instance, to Europe, to maybe Asia, what feels a bit easier than going to the African continent. And I see this behavior very, very much often. And another example, most of the people I met now in Kenya that are also foreigners, once they touch Kenya for the very first time or the African continent for the very first time, they cannot imagine of going back anywhere else. So once they saw how the countries actually look like, how life there actually is, what kind of things they actually can do there, most of them really don't want to go back at all. And every time I hear these stories and I think back of this kind of fear I also had in the beginning, and I see many other people are also having, I can sometimes not understand how much power these kinds of fears have over us, when we could just make the decision to at least visit the country once you want to move to, or at least visit the African country once, just to see things for yourself, to create your own picture, that you don't have to paint these different scenarios anymore, that you understand how it actually looks like, how the people are actually like, how life there is, or how life there could be for you as well, to just lift all these fears up and just get your own picture. And if there's one thing that could help you to overcome this fear and stop dreaming about moving to the African continent and finally execute on it, is just visit the place first. If you want to visit to Ghana, Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, whatever country you want to move to, just visit. And I can tell you that 90% of your doubts and fears will be lifted. You will not have the same fears anymore. So just make the first step. Do some research, make the first step. Maybe you can go into a couple of communities there to figure out how the locals are, to meet some other people that moved there, just to get an understanding how everything is, how the process is, how life there actually is, what the locals say, what people who are living on the ground are saying, and not what people you know that don't even have any touch points with any of these countries say, because then the opinion will always be the same and it will be difficult for you to make your own decision. And there's one last story I want to tell you. A couple of days I had a phone call with a 64-year-old lady from Austria, and I was very impressed when I was hearing her story, that she's now just packing up her bags, getting ready to make a move to Kenya as well. And this at 64, alone, and she has no fear. Of course she has questions, but she has no fears of moving to an African country. And it's also actually her very first time visiting, and she hasn't even been to Kenya or to any other African country. She just moves right away. And I really think that's a very bold move, especially in this age. If she can do it, I think many of you can also take the step, or even at least visit one of the countries you're thinking of moving to, or like just visit the African continent. If it's a similar feeling for you, it changed my perspective on life, it changed my perspective on everything basically. That I have now my entire focus on living on the African continent with all the ups and downs. It's not perfect all the time, but now at this point I really enjoy as well the downsides and everything else that connected to living in Kenya and visiting all other African countries. So I hope this video helped you a little bit, because I know how it feels to be in your position, to fear starting over, fear the uncertainty, and fear many other things in this case. But once you overcome it, everything will get much lighter. You can face challenges easier, and you will just push through because you really enjoy the experience. At least is what it was like for me. So I really appreciate you watching. I hope this video could help you, and watch some of the other videos I placed right here about my move, my journey, my challenges and my wins of living here on the African continent and doing business here. That those videos will help you hopefully too. Thank you so much for watching.